Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vice President, Loyalty and E-Commerce, Air Canada, Mark Nasr, in discussion with Skift Aviation Business Editor, Brian Summers.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for staying. I know I said this before when I was meeting with Andrew, but Mark really is one of my favorite people in the airline industry, so it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So some of you may not realize this or may not understand the extent of it, but I'm going to tell you something interesting. Air Canada doesn't really have a loyalty program because of a decision made about 2 decades ago. And Mark was brought into Air Canada in part to revive a program and create a new program. So first off, Mark, why do you not have a loyalty program?
Sure. So just a little bit of context. We participate in a loyalty program named Aeroplan. It was something that actually Air Canada started in-house in 1983, or the precursor to it. And we grew it over the years to be the second largest loyalty program in the country. But a number of years ago, we had taken the decision first to manage it separately, thinking that with dedicated resources that really felt they were in the loyalty business, the division would be able to grow more quickly than if it were, let's say, typically within the airline. And then a few years after that, we took the decision to spin it off. The decision was made at the time for 2 key reasons. The first was we were frankly in a very troublesome position financially, and that was one of the best assets we had at our disposal. And we were about to begin embarking on a transformation plan, and we needed to fund it. The second main reason was we considered back then that the business that the loyalty group that Aeroplan was engaged in wasn't core to the airline operation. And it was kind of more of that thinking of, as an independent entity, not only would they be able to move faster in the Canadian market, but they would potentially have the ability to get into adjacencies and go global and create significantly more shareholder value that way. So that's why we had made the decision at the time to outsource it.
Okay.
Or sorry, to spin it off, rather.
And of course, we've heard so much today and at other times about how important having an in-house loyalty program is just because of the data that you get from it. So what are you missing about knowing your customers now that you don't have that program?
Yeah, so a couple of key things have changed, since we made that decision that has led us now, or at least last year, to announce starting in 2020 when our contract with Aeroplan is finished that we'll start our own program. First is we're in a much healthier position financially. The company has been completely transformed. I can tell you a little bit that transformation story, but that's a key part of it. The second key part of it is the role of loyalty programs. Both as a business in and of itself, the credit card, selling points, so on and so forth, but even more importantly, the role of the branding part of the program and the data components in terms of building closer relationships to customers, being able to engage through digital channels. That's changed a lot in the last 10 years. And it was really when we kind of came down to the renegotiations last year with Aeroplan, we said, look, on the economic side, maybe we could come to an agreement, but on the customer experience and the closeness of the relationship side, there was no way we were going to achieve what we wanted to achieve without control. And we're obviously, can't take control of, an independent company in terms of business strategy. And so, kind of the natural decision was, well, let's take this back in-house and let's build a better program from the ground up.
Come 2020, when your contract expires and you start this new program, you're going to be able to start from scratch. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, so this is super exciting to us. Just a little bit on the Air Canada journey for the last couple of years. We might be the transformation story in travel. So in the last 4 or 5 years, we've done a fleet transformation, a cultural transformation, a network transformation. We've grown the revenue by about 50%, and we were already a pretty large airline to begin with, 81-year-old company. And we're continuing down the transformation path. The next 2 big things are loyalty and digital. On the loyalty side, the approach that we're taking here is what we like to call capital L loyalty versus small L loyalty. So small L loyalty is the points program, right? And kind of the traditional, what you'd think of as a frequent flyer program. Capital L loyalty to us is the combination of the service our people provide, the brand, the products, and the points program all together. which are all wrapped up and primarily delivered by the digital channels. So in terms of, we made the announcement a year ago, we've got actually a series of implementations between now and 2020 when the points program starts about introducing the new loyalty program. So last year we rolled out brand new web and mobile channels. This year actually in a few weeks we're going to cut over to a brand new customer data platform. We've overhauled our marketing operations, our digital marketing, and we're on this march to have a lot more relevance, a lot closer relationship with customers, and the points program will be kind of that last step change in the transformation when that launches on June 30th, 2020 at midnight and 1 minute. Hopefully.
That would be interesting. All right, so I have to purposely ask a dumb question here that a reporter should never ask, but Mark says he has something to tell us, and he said that I should ask, Mark, what cool things are you working on?
That's not exactly how it went down.
That's pretty much how it went down.
Sure. Well, we were having a chat before getting on stage, and you asked me if we were working on any cool things there. There's maybe two things that I bring up. One super sexy in my geekdom world, and one maybe a little less so, but equally practical. The first is, there's a lot of talk about at this conference about personalization. I think that's one of the buzzwords, right? So to us, kind of the core of that capital L, a lot of it has to do with relevancy and respecting people's time. When you talk about optimization in the airline industry, the travel industry, a lot of the discussion is usually around product offer optimization. So you have 10 products, put the right one for the customer. There's also a lot of talk about price optimization, like revenue management applied to ancillary products. For us, we see an additional lens to it, which is content and delivery optimization. So one of the things we started to do in the last 6 months is partner and bring 3 what we consider to be best-of-breed technologies together. We're working with a company called Prasado, which is a machine learning-driven company that actually creates automatically content, literally writes copy and emojis, which are designed to invoke certain emotions. That's the first part of what they do. But the second part about what they do is multivariate testing on steroids so that you can emotionally segment your customers, figure out what drives them. So you take that, you take a solution like Movable Ink that allows you to do real-time, highly dynamic content painting in real time on top of our Adobe technology. And we can actually now, we're doing this really in production, deliver personalization from both a, let's say, substantive need perspective, but also an emotional perspective at mass scale. And the big trick there is moving beyond tests and pilots and moving really to making it the core of how we do business and scaling it across millions of customers. So that's kind of one thing I'd have to share.
Okay, so I need to ask another dumb question. I mean, the system is going to know that I am getting divorced from my wife and I'm sad, and therefore I need to buy this from Air Canada?
So it's probably
I'm not getting divorced, but
yeah.
yeah.
It's probably not going to know that. No,
Yeah.
of course not. But what it is going to know over time as we deploy multiple messages and we see how individual customers react are do things like scarcity versus value versus fear. What are the things that kind of drive you? Right now, this is kind of a very sensitive thing because you can learn what emotions drive someone, but you still fundamentally need to deliver real value to customers in terms of offers that make sense, that are relevant to them, right? So that's really the first step. You don't want to offer people things that they don't want. Once you have that, then you have to figure out what's going to be the best marketing tactics to ensure you get as many clicks, as many opens, as much eyeball time as possible.
Okay.
Yep.
And you were telling me in another conversation that no matter how much new digital technology there is, email is often the best way to make offers to people. Is that still the case?
So it's not necessarily that it's the best way. It's still a really important way, right? So email still has a very large part of our overall channel mix. But kind of critical for us over the course of the next year or two is going to be push and SMS and moving a lot more in that space. We've already started, as well as voice interfaces. So there was a little bit of talk earlier, I think, with Andrew over Amazon Alexa.
Yeah.
We're proud to kind of have launched the first Alexa skill in Canada for any industry, and we actually see conversational commerce and kind of voice as a user interface as probably what's going to be the biggest channel maybe 2-3 years out to 5 years out for us.
So do you have data on what people are asking the Air Canada skill on
Yeah,
Alexa?
for sure, yeah.
What do they want to know?
Now, so right now, most of the queries are kind of one-way, simple, is my flight on time, what's the baggage claim, things of that nature, policy questions as well. But we haven't launched commerce yet, and we haven't launched self-service. So the kind of two big next steps, number one, we'll launch commerce, so the ability to purchase a ticket. But I think what's ultimately going to have the most traction in the nearer term on that channel is servicing. So simple queries like, hey, I want to take the flight 2 hours earlier. Is it available on the day of departure? Or, has my upgrade cleared yet, right? And so it's yeah.
Okay. Also, when we were talking on the phone, you talked about something very simple, and I'm surprised that airlines don't do it. You partner with hotels, you partner with car companies. Your flights are delayed sometimes, they're canceled sometimes, and you said it should really be possible for you to tell the hotel or the car company that the shared passenger that we have is going to be late or going to be there tomorrow. Is that something that you can do?
Yeah, so I mentioned the new customer data platform we're launching in a few weeks. We're really excited about this because we're building a program from scratch. We've had to bring in new technology versus kind of converting legacy technology, all that exists on the Aeroplan side there. And our view of it is when we go and make the new partnerships for the new loyalty program, we're actually not focused first on selling points to other partners, which is traditionally what airlines would do with their FFP, their frequent flyer program. We're focused first on how can we provide a differentiated experience. You've seen some of this, like what United does with Marriott or Delta did with SPG, but we want to take that further. Now, in terms of the specific use case you mentioned, we'll certainly be able to do it technically. There is, of course, permission and privacy and ensuring that it's an opt-in type regime with customers. But we're absolutely sure that if we can put forth a clear value prop, like if your flight was just delayed, you don't have to worry about making those 3 phone calls, that customers will, we expect, opt in to get those kinds of experiences.
Okay. I wanted to ask you a similar version to similar question to what I asked Andrew this morning. You have connecting passengers. They're in your airport somewhere. You dropped them off. You don't know where they are. You want to know if they're going to make their next flight. Are we going to get to a point at some point where you really understand where in the airports your customers are, so you know whether to hold the flight or send it on?
Yeah, so connections are hugely important for us. We've actually recently branded our product called AC Transit. And there's kind of 2 sides to, we think, making the connection better. The first is, and equally important, making sure that the customer has all the information they need, because airports are getting bigger and bigger and more complex, more and more air travel, all of that. And the second part is making sure that the airline has as much information as it needs to optimize the operation to facilitate connecting passengers. So we're doing things on both fronts. On the latter, there's actually a pretty tight ecosystem in Canada of the major airports, the government authorities and the airlines to share information to facilitate, or for facilitation, optimization, so essentially making sure security and immigration flows are quicker, that we can route bags more effectively, also where a customer is in a connection process, and so we're able to make use of those data today. We'll be adding a feature in our mobile app that allows a customer to share their location, not so dissimilar from, example, the precise location Uber has to optimize the pickup experience.
Yeah.
And then on the customer side, something we're actually going to deploy in 2 weeks is when you have an itinerary built, once you land at the connecting hub, there'll be a personalized guide to your connection. So what a lot of airlines have done is they've deployed maps. And maps are great. They have a part of the solution, but it's more complex than a map. Do I need to go through security again? Do I need to go for immigration? Do I need to pick up my bag? Why do I need to pick up my bag? And those use cases vary a lot depending on the type of connection, multiple airlines or same airline, all that. So this kind of personalized connection guide, we hope to kind of answer all those questions. And then the map is there, to give a visual to kind of those instructions.
Great.
Yep.
All right, I want to ask you one final question, and it's actually related to your prior employer. Mark was at Continental Airlines and later United Airlines, and I believe that they came up with the single best innovation in airline app technology, really in airlines, in the last 10 years. So Mark was part of the team that created this functionality. You guys may know if you fly United, where is this aircraft coming from? So you can trace your airplane, if you want to know if it's on time, all the way back, flight by flight by flight. So you don't have to rely on the airline, you just chase the tail, or the fin, as you call it. I don't know why. Yeah. But tell us how you guys came up with that.
Sure. Actually, well, credit goes where credit's due. First of all, there's actually 3 key people at Continental that were involved in that. I wasn't at all, other than just admiring them from the sidelines. Shannon Kelly, who's actually at Hawaii now and sitting in the audience, a fellow named Scott O'Leary, who happens to be at Air Canada, and a flyer talker, Dean Burry, cigar man on Flyer Talk.
Do you guys know what Flyer Talk is?
Yeah.
It's a frequent flyer message board that I occasionally lurk on.
So I'll tell you the story quickly. Here was the idea. So we had these expert customers that, through their years of experience and their hundreds of flights, had figured out all these workarounds to be able to kind of optimize their own experience, right? And so those 2 folks from Continental sat down with the flyer talkers, and they essentially said, what do you do? What secrets do you have? And then they went and they simply sought to wrap a really simple, intuitive user experience around those workarounds. So there were actually, I think, 4 that launched at the same time. Real-time standby lists, real-time upgrade lists, real-time seat maps, and where is my plane coming from? So all of that came simply about trying to take, kind of what's in the brain of the expert flyer and democratize it to give it to even the once-a-year traveler and make it simple and easy for them.
Yeah, it takes out a lot of anxiety from air travel because you have a better idea whether your plane's going to be on time or not.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there's a whole lot more. It's kind of interesting. Since those 4 or 5 features were launched by Continental, many airlines, including my own now, Air Canada, have replicated those features. But there actually hasn't been a whole lot more of them, from my mind, especially shopping, frequent flyers, award travel launch. So the interesting thing is, I guess we're in a little bit of a race now. We've got some ideas up our sleeve, see what the next 2 years holds.
Great. We have time for at least 1, maybe 2 questions. I'm going to ask you, I can do this. It's up there on the board. It's a non-digital question. But there's some new entrants in Canada right now, especially ultra-low-cost carriers that are coming into your turf. It's a small market. So how does Air Canada feel about new competitors potentially entering your market?
We welcome and love competition. We compete aggressively. Something to note about Canada, it's larger than the United States with 1/10 the amount of people, and a lot of higher costs in terms of taxes, fees, infrastructure. So the nature of the ULCC, the ultra low-cost business model in Canada, it's a little bit more difficult than the scale you have from the U.S. market and the costs that are in the U.S. market. There's been a few that have tried to provide ULCC type services. There's also a different customer expectation. Perhaps a little bit more focused on complete service or higher end service in Canada than there are in some other markets like Europe and the United States. So there are those folks coming into the market. We have a leisure wing called Rouge, which in and of its own right is one of the 50 largest airlines in the world. And we look forward to deploying Air Canada and Rouge head to head where we need to and where we don't, see how the market plays out.
You have some great employee uniforms on Rouge, very sporty.
Yeah, they're very nice, very colorful.
All right, let's take this first question up here. In your view, how does Star Alliance and other collaboration models influence your digital strategy?
I might get in trouble here. So if you had asked me the question a year ago, I would have said Star Alliance isn't very helpful on the digital side. But a new CEO came in, Jeffrey Goh, and one of his kind of key strategies is the launch of the Star Digital Services Platform. It actually, he talked about it last week at the IATA conference. We are huge supporters of this, and we've partnered, it's the entire alliance, but principally with United and the Lufthansa Group, who are joint venture partners. And via this digital services platform, we can go around the legacy technology and some of the other classic industry players to do things as simple as seat assignments on one another, exchanging information and data, preferences, facilitating irregular operations. So we're super excited about this, and you'll see over the course of the next year a lot more come out that will just kind of really make the basics more seamless when you're connecting between Star Alliance carriers.
Okay. That's the most positive I've ever heard an airline executive about any alliance, actually.
I said,
No, but there have been some questions out there, right? Are these alliances obsolete? And do they become less obsolete?
no, we still think alliances are extremely important. We fly to 250 places, but our customers actively go to about 1,300 places. And of course, there's a longer tail there, but there's another 100 or 200, after our network that we really need to serve. And customers want that consistent experience. So we think Star delivers tremendous value. In fact, when we announced the frequent flyer split, we weren't anticipating this, but one of the biggest questions we got is, oh my gosh, is your new program going to be part of Star Alliance? And of course it will, because we're the member, not Aeroplan. They're not the member. They will not have access to those seats. It really kind of does make a difference for our travelers. The alliance is real to them.
Great. We're out of time. Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.